At the club, the bass was thumping, the kind that makes your chest vibrate with each beat. Neon lights flickered across the faces of strangers, making the crowd a blur of movement and color. I had come here that night to unwind, to shake off the stress from a week that had left me exhausted in every way. But as soon as I saw her, the familiar warmth I had always associated with her presence turned cold. She was laughing, too loud, too freely, with a man whose hand rested casually on her knee. Playfully, she had said, and the way they were leaning into each other made my stomach knot tighter than it had in years. I paused at the entrance, the club door clicking shut behind me, my hand tightening around my drink. For a moment I wanted to tell myself I was imagining it. That maybe her hand had just brushed against his, a harmless gesture between friends. But the way she tilted her head, her eyes glinting with amusement, the way he responded with a grin that was just a little too self-assured, told me otherwise. There was a story unfolding there, a story I hadn't been invited to read, and the realization hit me like a punch. We had been together for 5 years. 5 years of shared apartments, late-night dinners, and whispered promises. I had trusted her implicitly, not because I was naive, but because I believed we had built something real. Something unshakable. And yet, in that moment, I felt everything I had believed slip through my fingers. I walked closer, careful not to make a scene, careful not to reveal that I had seen everything. Her laughter stopped for a fraction of a second when our eyes met across the crowd. That tiny pause, that split-second flicker was all I needed to know. She had known I would notice. And the realization was worse than the act itself. Her name, Sophie, had always carried a soft power over me. But now, hearing it roll off her tongue with him, I felt a bitterness I didn't recognize. Every playful gesture, every brush of the hand felt like betrayal compounded. I took a slow breath, trying to steady my racing heart. The music was loud, but in my head, everything was silent. I replayed every warning sign I had ignored, every subtle shift in her behavior over the past few months that I had dismissed. Late nights that she called work, sudden phone locks, little excuses that now felt like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see. I made my way through the crowd, each step measured, each step fueled by a growing resolve. There was no yelling, no confrontation just yet. I observed. I catalogued. The way he rested his hand on her leg lingered too long. The way she didn't move it away. Playful, she had said. But to me it was a line crossed, a boundary broken, a trust shattered. The club seemed to fade around me. The neon lights, the music, the laughter of strangers, they all became background noise to the one image seared into my mind. Her hand on his leg. The look in his eyes. And the subtle, almost imperceptible smirk on her lips. I stepped closer, my drink forgotten at the table behind me. My mind was a whirlwind, spinning between anger and disbelief. How had it come to this? How had I failed to see the signs? She had been careful, meticulous even, in making sure I didn't notice before. But tonight, under the lights, with the crowd pressing around us, she had let it slip. I watched as she adjusted herself, leaning back slightly, her hand sliding almost naturally from his knee to his thigh. Not enough to be overt, not enough to alarm the casual observer. But enough to make my blood run cold. Enough to make me realize that I couldn't ignore this any longer. The playful excuse wouldn't suffice this time. A part of me wanted to storm over, grab her hand, demand an explanation. Another part wanted to leave, to walk away and pretend I had seen nothing. But the anger, the betrayal, the sheer audacity of it propelled me forward. I reached their table, my presence finally registering in their peripheral vision. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Surprise. And maybe guilt. But the man, the one whose hand had violated my trust, only smiled. Too confident. Too smug. He thought this was some game he could play, a test of boundaries he had won before it even began. But he had underestimated me. I placed a hand firmly on the edge of the table, leaning in just enough for her to see the intensity in my gaze. "Is this how you think things are supposed to happen?" I asked, my voice low, controlled. No shouting, no theatrics. Just a calm authority that made the room seem to shrink around us. The music didn't change, the crowd didn't stop, but the world I was in had narrowed to just the three of us. Her lips parted, an excuse ready, a playful laugh perhaps, but I cut her off with a look that froze her mid-sentence. "No," I said, each syllable deliberate. "I want the truth. Now." The man chuckled nervously, the confident facade cracking under the weight of my gaze. He moved his hand slightly, unsure whether to retreat or stay. But it didn't matter. I had seen enough. I had understood enough. Sophie tried to touch my arm, a gesture that had once been comforting, once been soft and familiar. Now it felt like manipulation. It's nothing, she started, but I didn't let her continue. I had heard the lies before. I had sensed the shifts, the small betrayals that had added up over weeks and months. No, I wouldn't allow her to minimize this, to reduce it to a playful gesture that she could dismiss with a laugh. I took a step back, giving myself space, giving her the chance to speak the truth. The tension hung between us like a physical weight. The music pulsed around us, but it felt distant, irrelevant. This was not about the club, not about the lights or the crowd. This was about trust. About respect. About the lines that had been crossed and could never be uncrossed. Her hand stayed midair, unsure, hesitant. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't allow this to continue. Not tonight. Not ever. The playful excuse, the laughter, the smirk, they all ended here. I stepped closer again, voice steady, calm, cutting through the noise. You need to choose, I said. Now. Do you step back or do we end this? Sophie's eyes flickered, a brief flash of panic. The man beside her shifted, realizing the game was over. No more playful gestures. No more casual laughter. Everything had consequences, and tonight they were both about to learn that lesson. I waited. And in that wait I realized something. The anger, the betrayal, the shock, it was all necessary. I needed to see clearly, to act decisively. And I would. No excuses. No half measures. Playfulness had no place here. Trust had been broken, and now action had to follow.